Good day everyone, I am Rika Escasilag of GPMC and I am here to present to you my chosen research study that I get from a Google Scholar. So the title of my research study is Pedagogical Content Knowledge, a systematic review of the way in which the concept has pervaded mathematics educational research. This research was conducted by Plin DePipe, Levin Bershafil, and Gert Kilterman. This is the highlights of this study. First, PCK is differently conceptualized in empirical mathematics education research. 2. Large-scale studies often measure PCK through a paper and pencil test. 3. Small-scale studies typically use multiple qualitative data sources. 4. Half of the PCK studies investigate the development of pre-service teachers PCK. Pedagogical Content Knowledge, or PCK, was introduced by Schulman in 1986 and refers to the knowledge teacher used to translate particular subject matter to student, taking into account possible misconception. PCK was and still is very influential in research on teaching and teachers' education. Mainly within the natural sciences, the present study aims at a systematic review of the way PCK was conceptualized and empirically studied in mathematics education research. The concept Pedagogical Content Knowledge, or PCK, was introduced by Schulman in 1986. As an answer to what he called the missing paradigm in research on teaching and teachers' education. Schulman criticized the lack of attention for subject matter both in the practice of training and evaluating pre-service teacher, and in the research on effective teaching and teachers' training practices. By introducing the concept PCK, Schulman wanted to emphasize the central role of subject matter in research on teaching and teachers' education and aim at overcoming the artificial distinction between content and pedagogy. The research study has two research objectives. The first objective of this research is how is PCK conceptualized in empirical mathematics educational research. The second objective is how is PCK investigated in empirical mathematics educational research. After knowing the research objective, let us now proceed to the research methodology. The researcher conducted a systematic review of the research literature through the consultation of three databases, which together assemble most international educational research, namely ERIC, PsycInfo, and Web of Science. Narrowing down this number of results was done using the following criteria. First, the contribution had to be published in peer-reviewed journals. Secondly, written in English. These two selection criteria were applied to guarantee the inclusion of research of a scholarly and authoritative nature. Third, in order to respect the focus of this review study to be selected, the articles had to be explicitly deal with pedagogical content knowledge and not with technological pedagogical content knowledge, or TPAC. Technological, Pedagogical, and Content Knowledge, TPAC, Pedagogical Technology Integration. The researcher conducted a vertical analysis or within case analysis of each of the 60 research articles that there were included in our dataset. In this vertical analysis, the unit of analysis was the article. Each article was summarized in a classification scheme including 9 aspects. 1. The definition of PCK. 2. The components that were distinguished in PCK. 3. The research question. 4. The research method that was used to capture PCK. 5. The mathematical domain that was investigated. 6. The country in which the study was done. 7. The number of participants. 8. The nature of the participant. And 9. The main research finding. The first two of these 9 aspects can be linked back to our first research question, whereas the latter 7 were derived from our second research question. Based on this vertical analysis, the researcher did a horizontal or cross-case analysis where the unit of analysis shifted from a particular research article to our two research questions and the 9 derived aspects. For each aspect, we compared all articles in our dataset in search of systematic similarities and differences. Let us now proceed to the summary of results. Not surprisingly, almost all authors refer to Schulman when introducing the concept PCK in their article. A horizontal analysis of the definition of PCK use revealed four common characteristics that are also in line with Schulman's conceptualization. First, scholars agree that PCK connects at least two forms of knowledge, which is content knowledge and pedagogical knowledge. Second, PCK deals with teacher knowledge necessary to achieve the aims of teaching. PCK is a form of practical knowledge, knowledge that teachers need for and apply in the act of teaching. Third, it is agreed that PCK is specific to a particular subject content. It is a teacher's pedagogical translation of a particular subject matter. As a fourth common characteristic, CK is assumed to be an important and necessary prerequisite for teachers' PCK to further clarify the CK that teachers need for teaching. Many researchers refers to Ma's 1999 concept of profound understanding of fundamental mathematics. A profound understanding in Ma's description has three related meanings: deep, vast, and thorough. A deep understanding is one that connects mathematics with ideas of greater conceptual power. Vast refers to connecting topics of similar conceptual power. Thoroughness is the capacity to weave all parts of the subject into a coherent whole. It refers to teachers' ability to connect different mathematical ideas and the flexibility to think in multiple ways about particular mathematical concepts. However, there is a disagreement between scholars about the extent to which PCK is considered to be inherently embedded within classroom teaching. On the other hand, there are proponents of a more static view on PCK who conceive it from a mainly cognitive perspective as the knowledge needed for teaching a specific subject. On the other hand, adherents of a more situated cognitive perspective argue that PCK is a form of knowledge in action and stress its dynamic nature. PCK is dynamic insofar as teaching practice and reflection action allow the teachers to reconsider their knowledge, modifying or reaffirming part of the same. It only becomes visible through personal involvement, through reflection and observation, and requires teaching practice in the subject within a specific classroom context. A second finding is that in 16th study, PCK is said to contain the two components that were originally defined by Schulman. First, teacher knowledge of common conception, misconception, and difficulties held by students regarding particular subject matter. And two, teacher's knowledge of a range of instructional strategies and representation that could be used to make particular subject matter accessible for students. Third finding shows that also in the other categorization of PCK, the two components originally defined by Schulman play a prominent role. To address the second research question, the way in which PCK is empirically investigated in mathematics education research, the researcher present the results of the horizontal analysis regarding first, the countries in which the studies were conducted, 2. Mathematical subdomain in which the study focused, 3. The research design, 4. The major research line in research concerning PCK, and lastly, the main research findings. The first one is countries. It provides an overview of the different countries and the corresponding studies in our dataset. Clearly, most studies stem from the US. From the perspective of scholars, conceptualization of PCK, it seems that studies in European countries more explicitly define the components that constitute PCK than the studies from the US. Second, mathematical subdomain. Present the mathematical subdomain on which the study in our dataset focus as well as the level of schooling to which the studies relate. Most studies are conducted with elementary and secondary pre-service teachers. Popular topics within PCK research are fractions and algebra and functions. This is not surprising since these mathematical subdomain are considered to be among the more difficult topics of the mathematics curriculum and probably lend themselves more to investigate possible student misconceptions as a main component of teachers' PCK. Within these subdomains, scholars differ in their investigation of a particular mathematics subdomain or of mathematics in general, whereas these latter studies often try to capture a more general mathematics PCK. The third is research design. For each study that was included in the dataset, the researcher coded the research method that was used to capture pre-service teachers' PCK. The list of research method used to unravel pre-service teachers' PCK includes first, test, second, questionnaire, third, interview, 4. Lesson observation through field notes, video or audio taping. 5. Observation of meetings, meetings with different pre-service teachers, workshop intervention courses. 6. Document analysis, lesson plans, portfolio, logbooks, message and electronic discussion boards. And 7. Concept mapping, graphical representation of the relationship between concepts. Number 4. Major research line in PCK. An analysis of the research question of the studies revealed that PCK research is organized along 6 major research lines. First, the nature of PCK. Second, the relationship between PCK and CK. Third, the relationship between PCK and instructional practice. 4. The relationship between PCK and student learning outcomes. 5. The relationship between PCK and the personal characteristics. And 6. The development of PCK in each line of research. A distinction is made between ascertaining and intervention studies and between studies that involve pre-service and are in-service teachers, resulting in 4 cells for each research line. The last one is main findings regarding PCK. On the first research line on the nature of teachers' PCK, many scholars have firstly demonstrated gaps in pre- and in-service teachers' PCK regarding a variety of topics, such as exponential function, problem solving, fraction, solid objects, and zero concept, or mathematics in general. Second, it is observed that pre-service teachers' PCK is more procedural than conceptual, but in terms of explaining student errors and in terms of the instructional strategies they propose. Third, through the incorporation of different mathematics subdomain in their study, some scholars have found that pre-service teachers' PCK differs across the mathematics subdomains and thus favored a topic-specific PCK rather than a general mathematics conceptualization of PCK. The studies within the second research line analytically distinguish CK from PCK. 2 different types of research findings can be obtained. First, studies that investigate the relationship through teachers' classroom practice stress the strong interrelationship between the 2 different knowledge types within the act of teaching. Second, based on the studies that use distinct test items to measure CK and PCK, it is concluded that both knowledge components are positively correlated and that CK is necessary through not sufficient condition for PCK. Through factor analysis on teacher's answer to a self-developed CK and PCK test in mathematics. 3 main findings result from the third research line. First, small-scale studies involving lesson observation and pre-service teachers' interviews reveal that pre-service teachers' PCK is associated within their instructional practice and that good PCK and CK is needed for effective instruction. Second, large-scale studies that complemented CK and PCK tests with video observation of lessons or student and teachers' questionnaires regarding teachers' instructional quality revealed that instructional quality is significantly more correlated to PCK than CK. Third, the only intervention study within this research line shows that a course for pre-service preschool teachers does not only enhance their CK and PCK, but also their instructional practice and student learning outcomes. Within the fourth research line, it is found that pre-service teacher PCK is positively related to student learning outcomes. Bumer 2010 conclude that the correlation between teachers' PCK and their instructional approaches as well as student learning outcomes is significantly higher than the correlation within teachers' CK. In the intervention studies, it observes that not only pre-service teachers' PCK can be improved, but that due to the intervention, also their students perform better learning outcomes. The fifth research line, namely on the relation between PCK and personal characteristics, provide the following findings. First, different from CK, no effect is found for gender on PCK. Second, language. whether or not the same language is spoken at home or in the teacher's training institute, has a greater impact on teacher CK than under PCK. Third, teaching experience has a positive effect on PCK. Fourth, mixed results are found regarding teachers' educational level and their PCK. Fifth, teachers' PCK differs across countries in their comparative study. And finally, the asserting studies within the 6th research line reveal pre-service teacher development of PCK through their institutional training and career and the factors that are supportive for this development such as collaborative learning, mentoring, and working in a professional community. The interventionist studies reveal that PCK can be trained through all kinds of formats, such as a discussion of video cases, the use of particular textbook, field experience, the inclusion of content knowledge in the training, structured interviews, cooperative learning, and group discussion. Even small training sessions such as a 2-hour workshop may influence teachers' PCK. According to Kinach 2002, training results in a shift in pre-service teachers' knowledge base from instrumental, showing rules and procedural to students, to relational PCK. Now, after knowing the summary of results, let us now proceed to the conclusion. This review reports empirical research on pedagogical content knowledge or PCK in the domain of mathematics education as published in English peer-reviewed journals based on a systematic research in 3 databases, ERIC, PsycInfo, and Web of Science. 60 research articles were selected and included in our analysis. The research question of the review were twofold. First, how is PCK conceptualized in the empirical mathematics educational research? And 2, how is PCK investigated in empirical mathematics educational research? Regarding the first question, it was noticed that all scholars included in our dataset agree on the following characteristics of PCK. It deals with teachers' knowledge, it connects content and pedagogy, it is specific to teaching particular subject matter, and content knowledge is an important and necessary prerequisite. Moreover, most authors agree on the core components that constitute PCK, specifically knowledge of students' misconception and knowledge of instructional strategies and the representation. About half of the studies follow Schulman's conceptualization of PCK and limit it to the 2 core components of PCK. An ongoing debate on the conceptualization of PCK centers around the question whether mathematical knowledge in teaching is located in the head of the individual teacher or it is somehow a social asset meaningful only in the context of its application. This different conceptualization of PCK also have an impact on the way in which PCK is empirically investigated. That was our second research objectives. Advocate of a cognitive perspective on PCK believe it can be measured independently from the classroom context in which it is used, most often through a test. They typically focus on gaps in individual teachers' PCK and how PCK is related to and distinguished from other categories of teachers' knowledge base. Based on how PCK is related to students' cognitive learning outcomes and on how PCK can be improved through a training. Adherents of a situated perspective on PCK typically assume that investigating PCK only makes sense within the context in which it is enacted. Therefore, they often rely on a classroom observation and typically aim at unraveling the nature of PCK within a particular context as well as its development through reflection of one's own classroom practices and through participation within professional communities. Given the existence of these 2 perspectives, it is important that scholars clearly state their position on the conceptualization and operationalization of PCK, conscientiously align them with their intended research goals. And that's all for my report. Thank you for listening.